Before we begin, two messages. What mobile platform do companies like eBay, NBC Universal, the Los Angeles Times, Razorfish, and PayPal use to build their cross-platform native applications? Titanium by Appcelerator. They aren't alone. There are now over 25,000 apps deployed by Appcelerator, which has been called the Rosetta Stone of app development. And you can start now for free. Just go to www.appcelerator.com for more information. When my company needed to develop a key mobile product, one that I was counting on as a new source of revenue, I knew exactly who to turn to. Macadamian. They delivered on time with incredible attention to detail, and I was able to get product into customers' hands faster than I ever thought possible. I've personally known them for 10 years, and they do make great products even better. Check them out at www.macadamian.com. Hello everybody and welcome. You've obviously landed on Tether.tv. I'm your host, Rob Woodbridge, also the founder. Never say that enough. This is that place where we bring together the entrepreneurs that are creating this mobile industry as the industry is evolving, which is very difficult to do. If you think about a flashpoint in the middle of the sun, maybe in a nucleus or some kind of reaction where it's just mayhem all around you, these are the guys that are out there building the things that connect the dots. And obviously, that's why it's so amazing to be in the mobile space today. I'm going to put it out there right now is that we've got a great guest today, a veteran in the mobile space and somebody who is building something that, the average person would look at and think, wow, this is so simple. Forms online. And we're going to get to the root of this because, as you'll see, this is just one piece of a much greater layer in the mobile space around data and data collection and everything that has to do with it. Data is the king of mobile, and we're gonna dive into it. I'm joined from Virginia, and I'm joined by Sze Wong, who is the founder and the CEO of a company called Xerion Software, and these guys are the creators of iFormBuilder.com. And we're gonna touch on all of this, but the first thing I just want to welcome Sze. Thank you for doing this. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So, I put it out there. We talked a little bit about before in the pre-interview, just talking about, form building.
Sure.
This is something that I did in the 90s as a web developer. And here we are kind of 15 years later and long past my prime in development. And we're talking about form building. But before we get into that, talk a little bit about the history of the company. First with Xerion, and then we'll jump into iFormBuilder as we go.
Sure. So I formed the company in 2004. So a little bit of history is back in 1999, a lot of people who are now working in Xerion Software, we all work in the mobile space in the local startup here in Virginia. And we were working on Windows CE, Palm Pilot, BlackBerry. Well, BlackBerry is still around, but back then it's very different. So we basically doing the same thing like we're doing now, mobile workflow, mobile data collection. And back then it was a very different environment. And we have to go out and tell people why mobile is important. Nowadays you don't have to. But nonetheless, we all fell in love with mobile. That company was sold and we went our separate ways. And so in 2004, I basically get tired of the job then, and I say, okay, well, I'll just start. At that point, I still don't know what happened. It was 2004, so the iPhone is not around, Android is not around. It was still a very different era. And so we engaged some consulting jobs and try to get money. And by 2008, the time it came. I remember we had lunch with a fellow. And he looked me in the eye and said, "Z, you got to do this." I made in 3 weeks more than what I would make in 3 months. And it was a tic-tac-toe game. So he was saying, well, do this. And that weekend, I got my first MacBook and started building the product. So that's how iFormBuilder came about in sort of in a different incarnation.
Right.
The iPhone, the new technology is very different than before, but the industry didn't change. It's still the same kind of data collection. So in a way, I keep telling people that I've built this like 3-4 times now. So that's why I will always joke about if you give me a competitor, I will tell them where in the life cycle they are in right now and when do they hit what pitfall, because I've been there. So that's the long history of it, and so now in iFormBuilder, what we try to do is it's essentially trying to build what we're still trying to build, the enterprise software. But in a SaaS model, in a consumer-based device, those didn't exist 12 years ago.
Right.
And what we found is it's just vastly different landscape.
So I mean, when you start to talk about what it was like back then, the problems are the same today as they've always been around data collection or on the job, form filling. I always used to think, I had an incident in my office. I needed to call Roto-Rooter, and they came in and they fixed it. And then it took them 45 minutes on the upfront to give me a quote, 45 minutes on the end to actually explain my bill. They didn't take credit cards. They wouldn't allow me to send it, do anything like that. I had to write with a check, or they would invoice me. And this is such a cumbersome process that they went through, and in order just to get a couple $100 out of me. And I always think, boy, would it ever be better if you could on the spot just invoice, fill out the form, get it done, and essentially that's what it is that you guys are providing as a service, isn't it? It hasn't changed. This need for it hasn't changed, has it?
Yep. No. Right. What changed is everything outside mobile. Actually, that basic business need didn't change. The infrastructure, I would say the environment has changed.
Yes.
Right. So in the past, what we will be using Motorola devices, those are $3,000 each. And then in the past, I mean, even if you talk about our first ever project in 1999, we actually have to work with a connection company, Aether. For those of you who were around then, mobile internet wasn't around. So if you want to do wireless networking, you have to have a separate network. So all of those adding to the cost of building this. That's why in the past, only the UPS in the world, the enterprise rental car, right? Those big companies, Shell Mobile that we work with, right? Only the very big company will be benefited from these kind of mobile. Now, fast forward
FedEx. Remember when FedEx came out? Maybe that was 98, 99. They had the, what was probably a $10,000 machine in each FedEx driver that could, the first time I remember signing that, the digitally, really changed my perspective on the way that, or the opportunities that fell in this space, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, back then, you either build your own device or use one of these ruggedized Motorola devices, or that is like this big, but still mobile, right? So now it's very different because of the consumerization, right? You have these that are a couple $100, actually $600 if you get it raw. But we've deployed hundreds of Android phones in places like South Africa, and it only costs $200, and is still very good, right? So that, I mean, I would say basically the environment is different because of the device, the connection, and people's mindset, right? I talk about this a lot. Nowadays, people talk about mobile. And in my mind, we always had mobile, okay, for a long time. And this is the new generation. And people talk about mobile nowadays slightly differently than before. In the past, when we talk about mobile, almost always strictly it's business-based. Now it's consumer first. You think about consumer first, right? So it's very different. But because, well, all thanks to Apple, people talk about this a lot. So now we no longer need to go into a company and convince them look at mobile. They already be looking at. So that is a very different environment, and it changes the way we sell and changes the way we can solve the problem.
So I mean, talk about that, because the shift has happened, right? Is that data now greets you in the mobile space, because there used to be a clipboard and you're filling it in triplicate, and now the data is hand somebody an iPad and some kind of cellular connection, and this really does speed up business. But is it really I alluded to it. I didn't allude to it. I came out and said, listen, forms. This is something that we've been doing for a long time, and is the mobile world rightly suited for form and data gathering, or are we trying to just take what we knew before and like web forms, which is basically the web became one big form, and jam it onto a small device for our benefit, not really so much that it fits into the medium?
Right, exactly. I mean, to me, what we trying to solve, what we call iForm, right? iFormBuilder builds forms. Those forms are very different than online web forms. And basically, I have the clipboard here, right?
Yeah.
These are the things that we want to kill. And since the beginning of time, people are using these. And I keep these around because this is a very good, very easy illustration of what mobile forms are. It's not a web form. Now, when you use these things in the past, okay, 50 years ago, or maybe 100 years ago even, right? You use these things, you go out, you don't have connection, you don't need connection. You build your forms up front, right? Yep. Put it on here, and you go out. So you build the form, put it on the board, and go out and collect data. Now, and then you come back and file it, right? In the past, that's what the workflow is. And so what we're trying to solve is we're trying to make a digital tool that makes this process much easier, much faster, much more like data integrity, much less retyping of data. So in what we build, disconnect is very important, and native is important too, because a web form is in nature not native and is pure connected. So what I call the 1 second problem, and the world now, especially younger folks who are so used to having always connected, they say, right, when we ask, I remember one client came to me, like, he went to the Google conference and asked them, well, I like using Google Docs for Google Form, but how about disconnect? No, and the engineer basically say, disconnect? What are you talking about? You're always connected. Now, yes, even in here, in where we are, it's pretty much always connected. But I say you always have that 1 second that you really need to be connected, that you're indoor, that you're under the bridge, you're in the basement, that you're doing real work, and at that 1 second, you will need it. So we build our entire platform based on that 1 second. Yeah, so it's more marketing than realistic, but it is.
But offline access has got to be key, especially if you're selling like you are. You're in 80 countries. There's bound to be dark spots in those 80 countries where you're in the middle of nothing and you cannot connect, right? So it is pretty valuable, and Google now sees the value of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, in the early days, I remember in 2009 when we first marketed, a lot of competitors are basically saying, well, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be connected, and building it online is much easier, okay? Because you can always go back to the server. Any changes much easier to push out. But then as complexity grow, as people, like you say, want to go to, we have a lot of projects, a lot of NGO projects that are in Africa, and they just know cell towers. So they actually, what we're trying to solve, what we call ultra disconnect. They're not just the 1 second problem now. There are weeks of problems. So their entire team will go out to a village, and they will go out there and collect data for weeks, and they have no connection within that time frame, and will only be able to connect back home. So how do we solve that? And that is another thing that we're very good at.
So, I mean, it strikes me that you've also got a lot of education that has to happen with these things, because it's really easy to take one of these and as you said, a piece of paper, and send somebody on their way to go and collect the data that they need. But the challenge then becomes, especially in developing nations, you know, did you look at this and say, listen, a lot of people, and it's true. I mean, when you go into Africa and you go into some Asian countries, it's a lot of people haven't quite grasped reading and writing yet. However, they're walking around with a cell phone and interacting and doing their banking with a cell phone, a standard, you know, chocolate bar size cell phone, where they're really, really engaged, and they're doing things that they could never have done before because of this. I mean, did you kind of look at that and say, well, there's got to be a mix here that we can use these tools and allow these people who don't have the reading and writing comprehension that maybe we do, but to enable them to be able to do these kind of things?
Right. So I actually want to answer this slightly differently.
Sure, please.
A lot of people ask us, like these type of devices and even on the iPads, right? Typing is a big issue. So it's like, well, how do I type on this? When people convert their forms from paper-based, on paper, you tend to have a lot of big boxes for just free writing, right? When they first convert into the digital form, they were saying, okay, well, I now have this like text area.
They just took the same thing and put it up on the web, right?
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't work that way. I say converting a 8x11 to a 3.5-inch form is not technical, it's an art. And that goes back into what you're talking about, is how to understand actually the underlying data that you're trying to collect. Is not purely converting. Now, in the past, on paper, you design your form one way only because of technical difficulty. I mean, or I would call system limitation, okay, of the paper itself.
Right.
Or freedom, because you're able to just draw a box and have people write on it.
Yeah, you can write on the back of the form even.
Right. And nowadays, we advise customers who are trying to build forms, and that's also why we don't offer a lot of template, because we really want you to sit down and think of what you're trying to collect.
Right.
And to try to answer your question, basically, what this process, what we're learning now is that 90% of forms that used to be free text-based, that you write anything you want, can be reduced to pick lists. And what we're also doing now, a lot of what we're doing now is converting pick lists into pictures. So even using picture option lists. And we're already giving out secrets now, which is not really secret, because in the education world, there's a lot of these computer-assisted interview that will use audio. So that all goes into what you were talking about, is beyond just simply converting a form from paper into digital format. It's not just taking a PDF. I mean, that problem it's there, and it's being solved by Adobe, right? They're pretty much taking your paper form, put a digital image around it, and you can fill it in, right? That's not what we're trying to solve. We're trying to solve the data problem. We'll make data easier to collect, not just typing in, right? So we went from, I mean, largely, I would say 80–90% of our forms are not free text-based, because it's not most efficient. And I always ask customers when they first convert their forms, they always have big text areas, right? And I say, okay, try it, and as you grow, try to see if you can reduce that into 10 options, even 100 options, right? And then have an option for the user to add when they need it. I would say 95, if not 100% of customers will come back in a few months, and basically they will be able to convert their forms into a much easier to use format, because they now discover that the reason they had free form text is because they didn't try to reduce that. And if they spend effort, I mean, actually that's not new either. In the research industry, right, which we're now learning a lot about, they have always been doing that. They always reduce free form into numbers. That's how they can do large, long-term research. And And through our platform, now we're sort of giving this into small businesses or medium-sized businesses, right? Text option lists and even picture option lists.
But you know, it's so funny because what ends up happening here is that we tend as humans to kind of migrate or congregate around the things that we know. So, you know, when I say I'm going to go out and build a survey, or I'm going to build out an online form or a form, and I'm going to translate that to the web space. I love your line here: is that converting an 8.5 into an 8.5 by 11 into a 3.5-inch screen is not as easy as it sounds, right? It's not. You're not just taking a form and you're shrinking it down. And you know, I often talk about mobile as changing the way you think of something. Stop. There's no linear translation from the way we did it into mobile. Now it's about starting over from a mobile viewpoint, not from anything else that we've done. So it's very interesting to think about the content gathering process that you guys go through, and your customers must go through to get this in as fast a way as possible, and in most liberal way, or you know, I guess an open way, so that they can gather the data that they need to, and they're not constrained, right? So that's the balance that you've got to have. You got to have the ability to get in there quickly, but you've also got to have the ability to do the equivalent to writing on the back, right?
Right.
So, you know, obviously this is a big challenge, and what you guys have been doing this for three and a half years now, as iFormBuilder, long time, just in general. What's different? Is there anything really different aside from, you know, the devices and connectivity? But when you're gathering data, is it, you know, are the you know, when you're building a form, you know, have we shrunk the size of the forms? Have we left them as long as they were? Have we just thought a little bit more about the details about what we want to collect? You know, do we think about going into this with an action, or are we still? Do you still see us doing the same thing, which is, you know, our tax forms, the incredibly long, painful process? Are we moving towards simplicity?
Well, yes. I mean, a lot of what we're trying to do. Again, I'll talk about this like 10 times over. It is not just converting paper into digital. It's rethinking what you're trying to collect.
Yep.
And simplifying. I mean, because with a system, a lot of forms, actually, a lot of old paper forms. I mean, you'll be amazed how inefficient our paper-based forms are, and it asks the same thing over and over again. It will ask, like, simple example will be, you fill in the form, it will ask you for your birthday, and then later on it will ask you how old are you. Well, that's redundant data. You don't need to ask one or the other. Okay, the other one could be derived, right? With the digital form, a lot of logic can be put in there, and that's also one of our differentiator. We allowed you to put in a lot of logic, and then also make your form very, very comprehensive. I tend not to use the word complex, because it's not. It's complex from a design perspective. You can build really sophisticated forms and be able to use to solve your problem. But it's ultimately trying to solve the end user, make it very easy for the end user, right? And then on the other end, we emphasize what we call open data architecture, where we don't try to limit you on how you use the data once you have it. And also, we try to focus on what we do best, which is give you clean data and open data, right? A lot of people, when they first heard about it, we're on the cloud, and they worry about, oh, there's this cloud-based login. Once we get into Google, it's the Google Cloud. They can never get out, right? So they heard that, like the Gmail issue. There's no export, there's only import, right? And we emphasize it a lot since day one, that what we're trying to do is give you very easy to use data. And I used the line that your DBA look at it would not freak out. And I've been there, because I've been doing this, and in the past, well, I was like the first generation when we built these kind of data collection app. Once we get into a couple million records, it's really hard to report out of in some architecture. So when we when we built this, when we built iFormBuilder in late 2008, what we're trying to aim at is as you build, as you design your form, well, I'm going to give you a data model that makes sense on your business, right? So at the back end, you have something that's really easy to integrate. So, and we won't lock you into any reporting tool, visualization, BI, or backend. Make it easy and give you XML, JSON, Excel, and you can integrate it. So that actually creates sort of like an ecosystem, if you will, that we have now consultants that are using our product, and knowing that we're not greedy, we're not trying to just eat up the entire life cycle, right? And it's not only we're not greedy, it's because I want to focus on what we do best, and then move faster on what we do best. So we, all in all, we're adding feature much faster than any other form-based applications, because we only focus on what we do best, and then and we give you the data that you can integrate and you can build upon it.
Yeah, I think the big thing is capturing the right data in the right format and making sure that you can use that data in the way that you would use it, not being constrained to, to your proprietary tool to view the data, right? But when it comes to, I mean, how is this deployed? Let's talk about this for a second, because, you're building the form, and then you're deploying it as a what? You're deploying it as a native iOS app right now, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, think of the native iOS app as the player.
Yeah.
That will play on. So you design the forms on many forms. We have customers who has thousands of forms, and you can divide them into groups, assign them into groups. So the engineering team has some forms, and the sales team has other forms. As they log on, it talks to the server, and dynamically it will download the XML representation of the forms. Gotcha. And so we're rendering native forms, and all the data and the metadata are all stored on the device.
So what this allows people to do is really create customized forms per job, basically. So if it's your job function to have these 3 forms, you assign them, they launch the app, it downloads the appropriate forms for them and only them. So it avoids people having to basically, hammer through hundreds of forms in order to be able to find the ones that they need, right?
Right. So yeah, and we designed a system based on a work group. So we always make sure there is an administrator in the back end, and they will manage these forms and manage how who gets what. So instead of a user will be starting with the app, and they will go download the forms.
Right. Well, so I got to think about this, is that you guys are enabling this. Like, it's kind of like the Salesforce for form building, right? Best practices, right. All that. And you bring it into a package. You charge a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription fee based on the usage and the activity. It's very straightforward when it comes to the pricing model. You're obviously making money at this,
mm-hmm.
right? It's an open-ended question, right? Like, hey,
better be.
Yeah. And every year you're making more money? How's that for a question?
Yes, we are. I mean, we are growing.
Yes.
And we don't see the world stopping. And at a pure level, we're basically just riding the wave that the world is riding along. We're right. Just maybe on the more front end of that, right? And because I mean, ever since I can look at our user growth chart. Ever since this thing came along, this is the iPad, by the way.
Just so that we know, it's not a Samsung device; it's an iPad device.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, now we're deploying on those devices too. So not just limited on the iPad, but ever since the iPad came about, our curve line just changed direction. I mean, it tilts a little bit more. Now, what the basic reason is, I mean, you can understand because we're trying to replace the clipboard,
Yep.
and this thing looks like a clipboard.
It certainly does. It's the same size. It's everything.
Yeah,
It's
and
8.5 by 11. You could, yeah.
right. So yeah, I mean, growing. Yes, we're making money. We're cash flow positive, and so we're happy where we are, and yeah, it's just amazing.
So I mean, what about? I got to ask, what industries? Like you guys are in 80 countries. That obviously lots of deployments. Is there an industry that you're seeing that that is dominating when it comes to deploying some of these things?
Yeah. So again, I'll answer it like that. So when we in the past 12 years ago, right? We grow up, quote unquote, grow up in the service industry.
Yep.
So you would assume building forms is more like your field service. You have cable guys coming in. You have the landscape company.
Yep.
All those like the UPS equivalent, the rental car equivalent. Those are should have been the biggest now, and they are, and that's where we're starting from. What we're seeing now, however, is we're discovering a lot. I mean, a lot of underserved markets. Actually, right now, our biggest market is medical. Now, medical is not underserved from a high level perspective. A lot of people talk about medical. What is actually underserved is the data collection part of medical.
Gotcha.
What we learned is that we have medical research, medical inspection. So there are a lot of school. I mean, we have Harvard Medical School, Columbia Medical School, Johns Hopkins Medical School. They are using our system, and what they do is they're using it for research. They're using it for lab inspection. So what we're learning is there are these types of industries that are traditionally being served by the traditional enterprise software. Okay, and traditional enterprise software usually costs a lot of money. And what we're learning is that because we came from a SaaS-based model, from a consumer device model, and they can use our product and solve the problem. And they're saying, well, our product solved the 80% of that problem, but only cost like 1,000. I mean, like 1% of the cost.
Yeah.
So they're willing to take it and say, well, we'll plug in the other 20%. And as we learn, we try to steer toward that. So the different right, the obvious industry is servicing and hospitality, like hotels, restaurants. All of those are very obviously big, right? So I always want to point out the unobvious for data collection is the medical, and then education. I mean, you will also assume when I say education, you may think using the form-based application, you can build tests, you can build like a registration form.
Right.
But again, it's not that. It's because the way we sell is we basically use the model, put a better mousetrap out there, and people come. So we learn all sorts of industries. The NGO market, what we call the outsourced disconnect market, it's also underserved, right? They're not. They all have their own solutions in the past.
Yeah.
But when a bigger company has a lot of funding, go after these type of data collection or mobile data collection solutions. They don't look at those industries. They always, bigger software company always look at a particular vertical because that's much easier. I mean, I have a lot of advisors who tell me, well, you don't put out a generic software. You put out a vertical software to make money.
Right. I've heard that advice as well.
Right. No, it's great advice, right? What the issue with that is you don't learn about what you don't know about.
Right.
So you need to know about something, right? You think, okay, medical is great industry, so you go in with the notion that you understand how to solve their problem. We go out and just a few people didn't know any better. We just put it out there and let the customers tell us how they're using it. So I mean, long time ago we learned that in Australia, it must be 2 years ago, very early days of the life cycle. They're using our product to inspect tram station, and they actually build a lookup table of. I mean, we didn't have that feature. They build that because of the extensibility of our product, and we didn't know that market exists. That every public transportation area that you need to inspect. So I mean, because of that, we got learned a lot. I mean, we learned the research industry. We learned how tell you like how housekeeping inspection is being done. I didn't know that, right? We all don't have a vertical background,
Right.
so.
But you would have missed all these opportunities had you focused on one vertical and become experts in that vertical. And then it's kind of that old adage about letting 1,000 flowers bloom, right? Which is exactly what you've done here. You give people the tools, and then the tools are, as long as they're built with an idea that they can be expanded. You've created something that allows people to use them, and that's a sign, obviously.
Right, exactly. I mean, we always, right, so trying to stay focused and do what we do best, and then work with customers and work with partners, right? So there are partners that are very good at, we have a great partner in this transportation industry, and in fact, they're actually getting an award on field service because they built a end-to-end solution based on our product.
Right.
And I like to talk about these because had we not been building a simple solution, well, they would be a competitor, right? They will build something on their own, and they will be successful too. I have no doubt, right? So a lot of these companies. So we keep saying that we want to be the Intel inside, while keeping the name on, while keeping branding and marketing, right? But we focus on what we do best. And we'll let you do what you do best.
Let me ask you, last question here, Z. Did you ever think that you would be building forms or building form-making software for a living? It seems surreal. It's like people who kind of grow up and sell T-shirts for a living, right? It's like and are very successful at it. But did you ever think that, hey, listen, I want to perfect the mobile form, and not the form factor of a device, but the actual form making, and enable clients to either save money or make money or streamline their businesses? Was that ever part of your desire?
Right.
It's pretty funny though, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I didn't write that article growing up or in grade school. I didn't do that, right? I thought I'll be an astronaut.
That's right.
Or general rocket scientist, right? So yeah, I mean, I keep telling my team that what we're doing is not making forms. Okay, making form is a mean to an end. What we're trying to do is solving people's problem. Let's talk about this. It's like I want to let you do what you do best better, right? So we have people who are or customers who are trying to solve the Medicaid problem, trying to move patients from one place to the other. We want to make that process easier. We have customers who are doing in the school environment, and we have a preschool that using our tool to carry an iPod Touch all day long. One assistant in every single classroom will carry an iPod Touch. And as the kids do something amazing, they take a picture, write a note, and use our platform to send a quick note to the parents and to the principal. Parents love that. I mean, we have enabled a project in San Diego. They're doing HIV collection. So what I learned also is that if you can detect a disease early on in the pyramid, right? They talk about AIDS being a pyramid. If you can detect it in the top tip of that, you may not need a vaccine because you can treat it early on, and we're helping that. I'm just very happy. I mean, in South Africa, I mean, I can talk for days. All these projects that I love to enable people to do good, and yeah, it sounds noble, but it's at the end of the day, right? We're doing forms just because, well, we stumble upon it. We build this product and people love it, and we're not stopping here. We'll continue to do. I mean, the way I see it is in a couple years, I will continue to say this, like more computing will be done on these devices than on traditional laptop. Now, we're not there yet, but the world is moving to that. And if you look at the past couple decades of software development, all of the business software are developed mostly on the Windows platform. And I did a talk a few months ago in a local college, and I told those kids, you're graduating in a very brave new world. And I say focus on 3 OSs, right? The iOS, Android, and Metro. And I talk about Metro, not Windows, because in my mind, Microsoft will move into Metro, not Windows.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's where I see the world is moving, and I'm very excited. We're doing iFormBuilder right now. At the end of the day, I want to just enable people to do what they do best.
It's very inspiring, Z. Like I love hearing these stories because you think of a simple process of data collection, and what that really means is enabling, and proper data means something. It means it to a lot of us, and I'm a data geek, and it really does. And the right data distilled down, it means the right pitch to the right batter with the right count at the right time of the day to create successful outcome. And I think that that's very cool that you have that perspective on the data that you're collecting. Is, listen, we're just an enabler for somebody to do their job and do it better. So my question is, I mean, you have case studies up on your website. You obviously have a passion about this. How can people find out a little bit more about what you guys are up to?
Well, go to iFormBuilder.com. Okay, and you can figure out how you start, or download the iForm app. Just type iForm in App Store. You will find 3-4 of our apps out there, and you can try it. We offer a 30-day free trial, and if there's anything wrong, just call or email support@iFormBuilder.com. We have an amazing support team helping you out.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Z, it just seems like, you know, it's a passion for you, and I can't wait to watch this continue to unfold as the days, weeks, months, years go by with this, and seeing how this becomes well, I mean, it's already consuming you, but just how it becomes more and more relevant in our life, where that Roto-Rooter guy that comes to my door is actually using something that's going to be effective. It's not going to waste 3 hours of both of our time, so that he can make some more money. I can get on with my day, and I think that that's what this stuff enables. And when you add a predictive layer, I'm pretty sure that he'll be able to knock on my door before something bad happens, just simply because of the data he's collected. Well, I really appreciate you doing this, Z. You know, a little bit of insight into iFormBuilder, a little bit of insight into Zerion, and I can't wait to see what you guys do next. I can't wait.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've been speaking with Sze Wong, who is the founder and CEO of a company called Zerion Software. They have created iFormBuilder. Go to iFormBuilder.com. That's obviously on the web. You can just do a search in the iTunes App Store for iForm, and a bunch of apps will come up. Go and give it a try. And when you're building forms, think about context. Think about what it is that you're trying to gather. Don't think about the form you have sitting next to you in the clipboard. Rethink the way that you build this, so that the data can come in and you can actually do something with the data. How's that for an end pitch? Is that?
That's great. That's awesome. Can I hire you for that?
Thank you so much, Z. Thank you guys for watching and listening wherever you may be. Really appreciate it. If you have any feedback about this or any other episode, reach out at untether@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time on untether.tv. Thanks, Z.
Bye.